Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of Caught on the Mic. I am Michael Clark. If you are a fan of modern rock, you are a fan of the band Shinedown. In this episode of the podcast, I have the fantastic opportunity to talk with one of the songwriters, the producer, and bass player of that band, Eric Bass. Eric has a solo album dropping on February 28th, 2025 called I Had a Name. A few months down the road, there will be an accompanying graphic novel helping to tell the story that Eric tells in I Had a Name. In this episode, we have a fantastic conversation about all of these things and some of the themes of mental health. I will forewarn you, it does get heavy in a few spots, but it's all good and we're all the better for it. Eric Bass joins me on Caught on the Mic today. As always, listener and viewer discretion is advised. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are a fan of rock and roll, modern rock radio, my next guest needs very little introduction. He is a founding member, a co-songwriter, producer, and bass player of the band Shinedown. He has a solo album dropping February 28th called I Had a Name. He's got an accompanying graphic novel that's going to be coming out along with it months down the road. I'm psyched about it. You should be psyched about it. Eric Bass, thanks for joining me on Caught on the Mic today, brother.
What is up, man? How are you?
Good, man. Good. How's 2025 starting off for you?
Oh man, so far so good. Busy. We dropped a couple of Shinedown songs this month, so I'm having to do Shinedown while doing the solo record stuff. So it's been super busy, but busy is good. You know, it's like it enables me to outrun everything if I can. So
I just got done saying the same thing. I've been like, my email inbox has just been blowing up with publicist after publicist after publicist. And I'm like, These are good problems to have, man. I am very blessed. I remember just a few years back where I was like begging to have people come on the show. And now I'm like having to turn people away. And
yeah, congratulations, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. That's great.
But let's talk about this solo album. Like I told you before we started recording, I listened to some of the new tracks. I absolutely love what you've got going here. This is a modern rock opera. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about your process behind it.
Well, I mean, my process is whatever it is that day. I mean, I wish there was some like I have no formula. That's the thing, man. Even when it comes down to, and I'm probably going to jump, you told me just to be myself here. I'm probably going to jump all over the place because I'm ADD as hell, but, yeah, but
you and me both, man.
Even when it comes to the engineering of records and stuff, man, like a lot of guys, and girls, kind of leave things set up. They have, the mics never leave the guitar cabinets and they use the same drum kit on every song and same presets for mixing, and these knobs back here never change that much, and they have a thing that they do. I am a glutton for punishment when it comes to art. Like, I don't want to like if I get a guitar tone or something, I mic stuff up. Once I'm done tracking it, I don't remember how I did it. I mean, I know what I'm doing, so I can get it back if I need to. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't really have any formula to anything, and that kind of spills over into the writing and stuff too. I know a lot of songwriters that have just this dedicated process that they go through to write, and I'm scared to death before I start anything. Every time I go to write a song, I'm like, man, I hope I don't fuck this up this time. I was really lucky last time. I got really lucky with that string of number one songs, but man, this next one's probably going to be the one that tanks. So, and that's just my, that terrible voice inside my head. But, I go into every songwriting session just kind of, sometimes it's on an acoustic guitar, sometimes it's on a piano, sometimes I've got a riff already worked out, sometimes it's just, sit down and think of a melody. I don't know. With what happened with this record was we were touring on the Attention record, and I think it was 2018. We were in Europe, and I had just gotten done with the workout in the room, in the hotel room, and I'd listened to Biohazard's State of the World Address, which is a record I hadn't listened to in a minute, but at the time I was like, oh man, yeah, I forgot how much I love this record. But I don't know if that plays into what happened, but I got done with the workout, and this voice that's not mine spoke to me and said, hey, you might want to write this down. And that might sound, if anyone's never had that experience, it's probably going to sound weird. If you've had the experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was not me, you know, it was not me. And I sat down for the next 2 hours and wrote down this story that would become actually the prequel to this graphic novel that I wrote. So I wrote this sort of, I didn't know it was an origin story at the time, but I was just writing down what came to me. And, you know, as I got deeper into that writing process, I realized that these characters that came later in the story were more interesting to me than the characters I'd started with. Some of which appear in the, you know, in the story that we're telling, but you know, that set me off on a you know, when you're writing a graphic novel too, it's very much like writing a movie script. It's very dialogue driven. It's entirely dialogue and art driven, I guess. There's really no you know, but I decided to put a narrator in this thing, so that made it even more weird. We can get into that later. Fast forward to, you know, some more touring on Attention. I started, you know, messing around with some songs and Pro Tools on tour and in hotel rooms and in dressing rooms, and came up with a few pieces of music and some melody ideas and a couple of lyrical things that were sticking out to me, which is generally how my, you know, if I said I don't have a process, but if I do have something that seems to sort of be at the core of me writing is I will generally have, like, I'm not just going to write chords. If I'm going to write chords, I'm going to write a melody. If I'm going to write a melody, I'm going to have some phonetic things that sound good over the top of them, you know, maybe like placeholder lyrics or whatever. Very famously, Yesterday by the Beatles, Paul McCartney, you know, yesterday was actually ham and eggs for a long time. You say ham and eggs, you know, you just find things that hold the place for you. So I had that stuff going, and I went to Brent and I was like, hey, are you ready to start writing the next Shinedown record? And he said, absolutely not. And Brent does not like to write on tour. We don't tend to write very much music on tour. He likes to kind of separate touring from record writing. I'm kind of the opposite. I like to keep it kind of rolling all the time. So I said, well, I've got these, you know, these ideas, these musical ideas. I said, they're kind of different, you know, and I told him that beforehand too. I was like, you know, if it was going to be for Shinedown, it would be a very different Shinedown record. And it was just one or two things, really. It wasn't maybe two or three things. But at that moment, I was like, man, I really want to write some songs about this story. And I was like, it'd be really interesting to put not really a record that's it's not telling the whole story. You know, it's like some concept records, you listen to it and you're getting the whole story in that concept record. But basically what I was doing was pulling snapshots from the story I was writing, much in the same way I would do if I were writing a Shinedown song in the real world. You know, I pull snapshots of things that I see or of experience that I find interesting, and, you know, can put them into songs. So I was doing the same thing for this record, and finished out the Attention touring cycle, came right into COVID, and you know, that gave me a good excuse to finish what I was doing. So I finished writing this record, finished recording it, mixing it, and had the last mix done 2 days before Brent and I started writing what would become Planet Zero. So the record's has been finished for a while. Wow. And I just wasn't sure if I was going to put it out. You know, I'm riddled with self-doubt. I'm riddled with you know, imposter syndrome and whatnot. And it was, you know, and plus I love the record. I love that it exists. I made it for myself. I never really made it with an audience in mind. Yeah. The audience was me. And, you know, and I actually got to enjoy it a lot. You know, I was like, I probably listened to that record a billion times, you know? Yeah, you know, this time came up, and my band and my wife were all pretty adamant that I needed to put the record out. I'd kind of held out long enough without putting it out, and they were all like, man, you know, people need to hear this. And so, you know, just took a leap and decided to release it.
I love that, man. I absolutely love that. If anybody takes a cursory tour of some of your social media follows and some of the other interviews that you've done, you've got a very eclectic taste for different types of
Yeah.
music. I've heard you reference Ben Folds, you referenced
Yeah.
Biohazard, you referenced Faith No
Yeah,
More,
man.
like all of those bands, like vastly different from one another. And I think that's kind of the true mechanics of any really good musician, is somebody that's able to kind of step into something and, you know, apply any one of those influences to the art they're creating. I'm a former musician myself. So
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, I mean,
yeah. And so how do those fingerprints of all your different influences find themselves in this project?
you know, as I'm working on the songs, they just raise their hand, I guess. You know, it's not there's no conscious effort to, you know, I'm going to put a little bit of this in and a little bit of that in.
Right.
You know, some of these songs happened with an acoustic guitar in my hand, or with a guitar in my hand. Maybe I was plugged into an amp, but others, you know, look, I really wanted to, I did have an agenda in that I wanted to set out to make something different. I mean, that was really my
Yeah.
agenda at the end of the day. If I had one, maybe it's a bad word to use in art, agenda, but you know, you have to have something to aim for. And you know, when we're making Shinedown records, even though we, you know, we explore a lot of space in Shinedown, we try different things, but we kind of know what we're aiming for before we even start. You know, when you're doing something on your own and there are no boundaries, no one's going, you know, the audience expects this, or, you know, it needs to sound this way or that way, or, you know, then, you know, you could just wander around in that void forever and not really come up with anything. And so I did kind of need something to aim for, like I said, like an agenda of sorts. And it was
Right.
really like, okay, well, look, I love metal and I love rock. I mean, first and foremost, above all else, you know, those are the things that have put me where I am, and that's the school that I come from. So that's going to
Right.
be what it's going to be. But I've got all these other things I'm interested in. I love, you know, I I just love music that reaches down and touches me, man, and whatever that is at the time. Like I don't discriminate. So, um, you know, when I was some of these songs, let me backtrack. I was saying some of these songs I would pick up a guitar, or I'd sit down at a piano or whatnot. Then there are others that I would kind of come up with a part. I'd come up with a verse, or I'd come up with a chorus or a riff or something, and I'd stop and I'd be like, okay, what's like a really cool left hand turn that could happen with this right here? You know, what's something different that could take place and still be musical and sound like it belongs there? Like you didn't just throw something into it, you know, just to be shocking or something. So I would
Right.
say that probably, you know, 70% of this record was done that way. You know, coming up with like, man, I've got this great riff, or I've got this great line. I think the song Azalea, I sat on that chorus for a long time, not knowing what to do with it lyrically or vocally. And then I somehow I just set up a microphone like this, and I just started just singing nonsense into the microphone, which I'd never really done that before up to that point. I always try to figure things out before I set up a microphone. I was like, I'm just going to set up a mic and start singing. And that, oh, hey, the devils are coming down the mountain. And that's all I had for 3 weeks, you know? And then I'd come up with, oh, okay, and then the next part, and the next part, and the next part, and uh, what you're hearing on that chorus as it's laid down is how it was laid down. Like that, literally, what I just said about
That's
recording
awesome.
that first part of the chorus. I recorded, like, I think there are 5 or 6 vocals going on at one time. They're kind of all singing the chorus simultaneously. I recorded it like that, and then it just sat. And then I was like, then I started, you know, then I when I kind of knew what the song was about and what was happening with it, I started writing down lyrics, and then I record the next section and the next piece and the next piece. And then, you know, lo and behold, at the end of it, you sit back and you're like, okay, does this sound like a song, or does this sound like somebody that just recorded 5 different things over 5 different days, you know? Um, and, you know, the verses on that song at one point, I had a completely different flow, a completely different melody for them. And I mean, I was jazzed about it, man. It was awesome. You know, I'd written down all this stuff and it was cool sounding and whatever. And the second I went to sing it, I got through one take and I was like, this isn't right. It's not going to work. And it had a lot of it had to do with the honesty of what I was saying and the way I was delivering it. It was like, this just doesn't feel good to me. And I had to scrap, you know, 2 days worth of writing and just start again from scratch. And, it was a lot of that, man, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of you know, just trying to you know, uh, put as much of myself into something as I could without it being uh, absolutely boring. you know?
You know, I love Azalea actually because I was on the treadmill listening to that, and whenever it really kicked up and those choruses kicked up, I was pressing the up
Yeah,
speed on the
man.
treadmill. So I'm like, hell yes, this is getting me going. But you brought up something in that last little bit where you talked about almost like personification. So in your process of like writing lyrics, writing choruses, writing verses, how much of this project is semi autobiographical alongside this graphic novel that you're putting together?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably all autobiographical. I tell the story of listening back to it. There's a song called "Good Night, Good Night." It's just
Mm-hmm.
probably the song that's most close to me, I guess, lyrically. Yeah, it means a lot to me. It's probably one of the more personal things where I really was putting a lot of myself into it. I guess talking
Mm-hmm.
about characters, but really like, digging into my psyche and pretty hard. And I was listening back to that song. I don't know if I was listening back to the final mix or just maybe after tracking or something, but I had this kind of shocking realization that I, probably written the most autobiographical record of my career and done it through characters. Because as I was writing, the lyrics just seemed to flow really easily. I mean, I did just talk about a couple of stumbling blocks or things that got in the way, but Azalea, that song was, and I think it ended up being really great. It was when I had to
Mm-hmm.
dig on a little more, but there are other songs that were just, everything just kind of flowed really nicely, and so normally when you're writing music and things flow like that, it means you're being really honest, at least from in my experience. When I'm
Yeah.
trying to make up things, and it doesn't really, it's a lot more difficult. And I just noticed over the writing process of the record that everything flowed really well and was just kind of coming out of me. And that should have been a sign right there, but I didn't really think about it. And then I get to the end and it's like, oh yeah, like all of the things that you talk about, all of the things that you see in these characters that you're talking about are things that you actually see in yourself, and you probably needed to talk about, but you hadn't. Some of them I have. It's not like a symptom of being human, and monsters and songs like that. We definitely talked about
Right.
some of these things, but um, it really points to the fact that songwriting is therapy in a big way. You're purging a lot of things, and
Absolutely.
so yeah, even though I'm writing through these characters, and all of these songs are either from the character's perspective or from the narrator's perspective about the character, um, it's still very much about my experience with mental health, neurodivergence, and some trying to figure out some things from my childhood. By the way, I had a great childhood, great parents, nothing nothing dark or anything, but
Right.
just trying to I think a lot of us, I think if you ruminate like I do, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out why. I'm always searching for why am I this way, and I probably shouldn't do that too much. I should probably just say this just is what it is and move on. That's what most people do, and that's why most people are productive, and I'm not probably. But uh, so yeah, these songs ended up being very, very autobiographical at the end of the day, and but I think what that did for the record, um, if I had to think about it, I won't say a lot. I'll say some concept records can be very wooden and very on the
Mm-hmm.
nose about things, like they're telling you the story, and this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and Tommy plays pinball, and
We had to quote the most popular of all time.
but then there are other times that, and I think I hopefully have done this on this record, where you're telling the story, you're talking about these characters, but you're doing it in such a way that people can find themselves in what you're saying, and
Yes.
that's really what I tried to do. I think The Wall is like that. Like, I think people can listen to Pink Floyd The Wall and find themselves in it. And so, and honestly, man, that's not something that I intentionally set out to do. I wasn't like, okay, make sure the lyrics do this. I think it's just the nature of how I am as a songwriter, being in the band that I'm in, being in a very lyrically driven band. I push myself with lyrics the same way that when Brent and Zach and I are writing Shinedown songs, we're pushing ourselves with lyrics all the time. It's always about the lyric. And if we have to wait 5 days on that perfect lyric to show up, that's what we're going to do. If it happens in 2 hours, that's fine. That's great if it happens in 2 hours. But yeah, I think that just because of the type of songwriting that I do, I'm very, I want to find that lyric that's the people are going to relate to. And so hopefully that's what happened on this record.
Dude, I tell you, as somebody that I always quote you're always a musician once you're a musician, but I call myself a former musician.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right. But through all the projects that I did over the years, every single band that I was in, and I was the singer, and it would always start off really honest and really genuine, and then it would kind of pitter off to, that disingenuous structure that, okay, I gotta write for the crowd instead of writing for myself. And people can see through that. That is completely transparent, and it's probably why I found more success as a podcaster than I ever did as a musician, was because of that sense of honesty of just putting yourself out there. What is it that you gain personally and therapeutically by putting this portion of yourself out there? Because I do think that's very important, and I think that's a huge thing that the world needs right now.
I would say the biggest thing that I gained from it is that I can't become an avatar. Jacoby from Papa Roach and I have talked about this. We had a conversation about this at one point, about how, as I'm going to say rock star. I'm a horrible rock star. He's a rock star for sure. But as you want to be this avatar that people want to see, you want to be that guy that's on stage. You want to get off stage and be that for people. Right. And that can carry over into your private life and into going to the grocery store. It's like I think that because I've been, and we as a band have been so vulnerable about what we're writing about and showing, just being honest with people, not wearing the uncomfortable suit of fame or something, and really just trying to just be ourselves at all times, even on stage. I mean, on stage is a more elevated, amplified version of us being ourselves, but it's still us. Like, I never go on stage and feel like, I am extra and above and anybody. What the energy that we as a band carry on stage is one of, reaching out to the fans and wanting them to join us in whatever we're doing. We don't feel like we don't feel like we're doing them a favor by them getting to see us. We go out there with this sense of we want to experience this with you. We are here because of you. We are here for you. Almost this weird juxtaposition where it's almost like going out there as a servant in some kind of way. It's a fun job, and trust me, I mean, it's still look, I'm still out there to be larger than life. That's the point. You don't go to a rock show to see somebody cower in the corner. But I guess what I'm getting around to is that because we've been so honest with people, and because we just honestly talk about everything, and I can have this conversation that you and I are having right now, it diffuses that avatar, and it's allowed me to be, it's forced me to, and it's been a great benefit for me to be able to be myself in public. Honestly, man, what it does is it makes us, it makes us really boring rock stars. It makes us the worst, we'd make the worst reality show in the world. But look, Shinedown are 4 dudes that genuinely love each other, that yes, we have our ups and downs, and yes, we go through stuff internally. But I don't want to be in a band with anybody else at the end of the day.
Right.
And so we don't allow each other to be rock stars. You know, it's like, you know, hey dude, shut up, sit down. You know, no rock star
Right.
bullshit. You know, but I think that's a result of us and me being, just being honest about all of our maladies. I mean, we wear them on our sleeves, sometimes on our chest, depending on what we're talking about. You know, and we also wear our successes that way too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's kind of saved me from a cliche rock star life, probably. You know, one where I'm putting on airs and trying to impress people with everything I have and spend money on and do and look at my clothes. And instead, I'm this slightly autistic kid that just wears black pants and white t-shirt every day of my life because it's comfortable. And I am radically uncomfortable in anything else, you know? So it's like, I don't even
Right.
like, and I like fashion, dude. Like I like fashion, right? But like, I can't bring myself to wear it. So
But there's a good analogy that kind of goes along with that. And you think about it in terms, this is crazy, but it'll make sense in a minute. Right now, the world is pro wrestling. Like, the world completely is pro wrestling. I try and avoid like the socio-political stuff on my show, but really realistically, the world right now is pro wrestling. And a lot of people don't know when the work ends and the shoot begins. And so I know with communicating with people, and when they have to drop those walls down and expose their vulnerabilities, um, they become teachers unwittingly to the world by kind of spreading that honesty about themselves, and it translates through art, like things that you guys create with Shinedown and what you're accomplishing or aiming to accomplish with this album. And I think that gives people a lot of sense of buy-in to what you are going to be doing moving forward and why Shinedown has been successful up to this point.
yeah, man, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think to your point about being a teacher, I've realized that it took me a minute. By the way, like I was not immune to any of those things I talked about earlier. Like
Right.
my younger days of doing this, I tried to deconstruct my life. I was putting on airs. I was trying to be something I wasn't. I was figuring the whole thing out, and eventually, what I learned was that if I kept doing what I was doing, I was just going to spiral into oblivion and destroy myself. And I better figure out who I was and be that person, And so when that happened, I realized I think my mission changed, but it wasn't a mission. I didn't have a mission statement about it. It wasn't like I am this and now I'm this. It was just sort of, it found me, and it found our band, by the way. It's not just me, which is, I really think I'm on earth to help people, and I can do it through music and art, and hopefully I can take this Shinedown's new song 365 that we have out. I wrote that song about Brent and I wrote it, but we were sitting in this room. We wrote. He was here, I was there, and we literally came up with that whole song in about 3 hours, man, of lyrically. But I've had a really rough couple of years with just losing person after person after person, and then having injury after injury, and insult on top of injury, and kind of got to a point where I got into a freeze response. I don't know if you know what that is psychologically, but it's just where your brain thinks that it's in danger all the time because you had so much pile on and pile on and pile on that you just freeze and you can't do anything. Like I got to a point where I couldn't even I didn't even want to turn the computer on to start a song. I didn't want to do anything, and so and the two big things. I mean, there's so many. Like I said, the two big things. There's so many. I lost so many important people in my life in a very short span of time. My dad being one of the most important ones. My aunt didn't have any children of her own, so we were her kids, and she lived right down the street. And I was with my aunt as much as I was with my own mother, and so that wasn't even those two things weren't even a year apart. I lost my mentor, Doug McKean. Doug meant a lot to a lot of people too. He was a great engineer. Worked on engineered such records as the Black Parade and American Idiot and
Right.
The Sound of Madness and Attention, and I can go on and on. But just such a great friend and a great person. Lost him suddenly, so anyway, 365 was a way to take. I was worried because I hadn't been able to articulate any of that loss. I hadn't found a way to talk about my dad at all. And I still haven't grieved my dad. Like that's interesting. I still haven't grieved any of these people. It's strange, man. Like I just push it all in, I haven't cried, and maybe I won't. I don't know. Maybe I never will. But it worried me that I hadn't found a way to articulate any of that and to honor those people. And then, we weren't intending to write that song. It just came out. It presented itself. So hopefully, to get back around to what we were talking about, taking all of that sadness and loss and trying to find my footing, and Brent doing the same thing over the past few years, we were able to take that, put it into a song that hopefully someone else will hear, and it will give them the fact that we found a way to articulate the pain. When someone who isn't a songwriter, that will articulate their pain, and they'll be able to maybe process some things. So the mission changed, man. It went from being like, I'm going to be this avatar rock star person that, I'm doing pills and I'm drinking all the time and, being a terrible husband, and, the mission changed. The mission changed to one of
right.
Now you can be yourself if you're brave enough to be yourself, because it's not easy at first to just kind of be, okay, look, I'm kind of a boring dude, so I got to be that boring dude because that's who I am. I'm just like I'm just sit in front of a computer all day and do and play instruments, but that translates into helping people, and I think that's that honestly at the end of the day is what I'm here for. So
let your friend Mike lecture you for a few moments here and tell you there is nothing boring about trying to put out good in the world and trying to make the world a better place. It's kind of it became my mission statement when I decided to become a podcaster, is like, what can I do to throw a little piece of myself out in the world and tell other people's stories so I can do my part to make the world a better place during some of the most tumultuous times of modern existence. I will say that grief is a weird thing. It is the strangest thing in the world. I too have lost my father within recent years, and I spent the last few years of his life, well, a long time, estranged from him, so I didn't know how to cope with the grief process. Ironically, hearing you talk about this, my dad's birthday was just the other day, and I grieved like none other since he's been gone a year and a half, because it hits you at the most unusual times and sometimes some of the most inconvenient times.
Yeah. I'm waiting on it. I know what you mean, man.
It is the weirdest thing. It is the weirdest thing. And like, honestly, the best thing that you can do is just not fight it and just lean into it and do what you guys did. Like, turn it into something productive. Like, and that's how you honor their life, is by, enlightening somebody else's. And I think that's a gift that you can give to the world through doing that. And it sounds like that you guys have done that through your new songwriting efforts.
Yeah, man. That's always what we try to do. We try to wrap up whatever's going on in our lives, or maybe a shared experience, maybe that everyone's having, and trying to find a way to articulate it. I often say that songwriting is trying to say something in 6 words that most people can't say in 600, and it's a big ask sometimes, to try to do that, and Take an album like Planet Zero. I mean, it's pretty obvious what that record's about. I mean, we were going through a very weird time with COVID, and it felt very dystopian, and it felt, very 1984 to me,
Yeah.
but that shared experience, we were able to get, to get these lyrics down that spoke to people, and I think the record came out at a perfect time when we were starting to come up out of that thing, and just about the time that people were really getting sick of, getting really sick of it, but I'm really proud of that record for being able to articulate those things,
So considering all of that, where's your sense of optimism right now as it is today? Because you and I also share, you talked about some of the traumatic response of losing people. Like, I will sit down here at the podcast desk sometimes, like minutes before I'm set to record an episode, and I will almost talk myself out of wanting to do it.
Oh yeah.
And then it's done, and I'm like, that was the best thing I've ever fucking done. That was fucking awesome. And I get super excited. And it's just based on how I react. And, listening to you explain your experience, it seems very similar.
Yeah, man. It's the optimism. Look, I hope I don't get too heavy with this. I
Go ahead, man.
if it's too heavy, but look, I'm going through a really rough time right now of it. Like I'm not well, and I'll sit in here sometimes and not do anything. I'll just sit in here and not accomplish anything. I don't want to do anything. I'm done. The world seems very bleak. My life seems, and for people that, look, what I'm talking about here has nothing to do with external like how things seem from the outside. Yes, I'm in a very successful band, and yes, I'm financially secure. And these are things that I'm very blessed to be. So it's not like I sit here and have this pity party about, I don't sit here and wallow in my money and just go, oh, poor me. It's not that. This is something, that I can't control, that takes over. And so I sit in here and I'm kind of, look, if and those things that I just talked about honestly kind of play into it in a way where it's like, man, like I should be, wait, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, I shouldn't feel this way. Like, this makes no sense whatsoever. But it speaks to the fact that whatever the depression bug is, it doesn't discriminate. It's there, and it doesn't care, what you do for a living. But in those depths and in those moments, man, of like going, if this is as good as it's going to get, why am I even here? Like, if this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life, like, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I should keep going, and I go through this whole gamut of emotions, these, passive ideations about things, and sometimes thinking way too much about ending it. But I have a deal with myself. And this is what I sometimes I say it's not, I understand it's not that simple for people, for some people. And I understand that, but for me, it is just this simple. It's, I made a deal with myself, and I took that option off the table a long time ago. And it was like, okay, look, you're not going to, because I had a very, very close friend who committed suicide. And, I still carry that around with me, and his mom carries it around with her, and his brother carries it around with him, and his other friends carry it around with them. And I'm like, anything but that. Like, figure it out, wallow in it, pull your hair out. You're going to feel hopeless. You're going to feel miserable, but you're not going to do that. And what that allows me is, I just realized that sometimes I have to sit in it. I have to realize the world isn't, we're talking about the world being a circus right now. That plays a lot into it as well. But the optimism comes from, knowing that I'm going to have those moments where I pull myself out of it, and how good that feels just to be normal for, like, I know it sounds weird, but just to be normal for a few days. I've had a couple of good days, man. I've had 2 or 3 kind of good days in a row where I feel better. I feel productive. And honestly, man, like it might be a small thing, but that's where that's where my optimism comes from for the future and for going forward. For me personally, look, I can't do anything about the world, man. I don't know what That's
Right.
another part of it, though, man. Look. I'm not going to get too down this lane as well, but like I've come back to faith a good bit since my dad
Yeah.
passed, and um, I'm a Christian, and I find a lot of solace in that. And uh, it's not, look, I'm not one of these people that's going to say, I hear people say, oh, I became a Christian and it cured my depression and all this. I'm not that person. That hasn't happened, right? But it gives me a light. It gives me something to aim for.
Right.
It's just try to live my life a certain way, and um, you know. I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, man. I feel like
No. This is
maybe I'm just
perfect.
rambling about it, but uh, I look, man, I would love to I'd love to figure it out. I'd love to figure out what to do and to lift all of it and have it uh, disperse and never come back. But maybe that'll happen one day. Maybe one day I'll figure something out, or I'll wake up, or something will take place. But um, man, I again, taking that that terrible option off of the table forever and ever. I'm not going to ever do that to my wife. I'm never going to do that to my friends. I'm not ever going
Right.
to pass that on to someone else. That's what they say. It's just, suicide doesn't end the pain. It just passes it on to others,
Right.
and so uh, that's been, honestly, man, like that's a really, really great thing that's helped me. It's just like, even in the depths, even if I'm thinking about it, it's like, well, it's not going to happen. So figure this out,
Yeah.
like do something about it. And, um, just removing that from the table, causes me to have to figure things out, and causes me to know, and just knowing and being through it enough to know that eventually it's going to lift. And, they're going to be better days ahead, right?
The thing about finding spirituality, no matter how it looks for you as an individual, whether it be through Christianity or some other deity or some other form, is the fellowship and the community. And I don't think people talk enough about the fellowship and the community of things.
Yeah.
If you extract the belief system out of it, just having that sense of community can do a lot for a person.
No, you're absolutely right, man.
Right. It's sometimes it's hard to self motivate. Like it's hard to get, like, for me personally, sometimes, like, I've got a ton of friends, but if you ask me to meet up with them at a restaurant, I would find a million different excuses not to, but I
Yeah,
would never
right.
regret doing it once it's done.
Isn't that weird, man? Like that's the weirdest thing. You're exactly right. Like that I'm so like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave the house. Uh, uh, and like we have an award show thing coming up, and I'm like, I don't want to go, man, because it's gonna be red carpets and it's gonna be blah blah blah, and that makes me uncomfortable, and I don't want to go do it.
Right.
But I have a feeling that if I go, I'll be glad I went.
Yeah. Absolutely.
At the end, that has nothing to do with faith or anything, but I mean, to your point about community, man, my faith has opened me up to others in the rock community and metal community, and who are believers, and I do Bible studies occasionally with some of them, and call them and talk to them or text them or whatever. And I don't think they'd mind me saying it here. It's like Clint Lowry from Seven Dust, and
Right.
Jacoby from Papa Roach, and Josh Sturm, Lacey Sturm's husband, Josh, who fills in fills in for Shinedown whenever I'm sick or Zach's sick or whatever, multi-instrumentalist badass, that he is. But like, because here's the other thing, man, it's like, trying to find spirituality and, find solace in something greater than yourself and in a story more interesting than any that's ever been told. But finding it with people who have your shared experience, and that I found that really, really helpful, because then it's like, all of the references I make, they understand, and we can kind of, but the community, man, you're right. I would encourage anyone who is feeling depressed, who is feeling hopeless. That's a great point, man. Something that maybe I haven't thought about enough, but you make a really good point. Finding, finding a community of people that you can, that's why AA is so
That's exactly it. Yeah.
is so successful, is because they set you up with a support system of people. I also know that for veterans, there's a foundation called the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and it's got Chad Robichaux runs it, and it's very much set up like a support system, so I would definitely encourage people to do that, for sure. It doesn't, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell everyone they need to find religion. That's not my point. But find a community of people that, that you can seek, that you can seek comfort in, and you can provide the same for them as well.
Yes.
I've got friends like that as well, man. My good friend Rob Pryor, who's a fantastic artist. He did all of the artwork that's in my album cover, and he's done a lot. I mean, he's just a legendary. He's become he started out as a fantasy artist, like doing comic book covers and
Right.
and Magic the Gathering cards and that kind of stuff. And he's worked his way into just being a pop culture artist. But man, he's always there for me, and I know I can call him, and I'm there for him. And Brent is like that with me too, man. Like, Brent's always there for me. I'm always there for him. My wife, and the other guys in the band, by the way, too. But those three people, my wife, Brent, and Rob are like my, they're always on call if I need to talk. And honestly, man, that's probably why I'm feeling a bit better the past couple of days. I talked to Brent the other day. We talked for like 2 hours on the phone, and the way I was feeling came up, and I was feel bad about it. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm just dumping on you all the time, but and he doesn't care. He'll just listen, and so that's, these are the places that the light comes from, the optimism comes from.
It's always good to take inventory about what's going on around you and check your foundation. And it sounds like you have a really good foundation, whether it be through Brent, your wife, and some of the other people that you're able to talk to. And it makes for a good platform for you to keep doing the things that you love and feel fulfilled.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing that I have to watch out for is making my wife and friends my therapist.
Right. Yeah.
That's probably not, because I think at some point it spills over into, they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they want to help, and they have no idea what to do. And that can be a bit unfair. Right. Mm-hmm. And I have to really gauge. I feel like I have a pretty good gauge on it. And I know when I'm like, I probably need to back off of talking to them for a minute, and I'm really bad about getting help. I think that's the executive dysfunction part of the DSM that I occupy, is I'm really bad about any sort of self-care, self-help, anything like that. And, but look, I've probably been at a point where I probably need to be seeking out some professional help at certain times too. And that's very difficult, man. It's very difficult to go, I've reached that point, I'm very much of the I've got it handled. I've got it taken care of. Believe me, I've got it. And internally I'm like, I don't have it.
Same, dude. Mine manifests itself through various hobbies that I'll get into for short periods of time until I move on to the next one.
Dude, that's ADD as hell right there, buddy.
I know. It would be like,
how much money have I spent on hobbies that I did one time? One time, one and done,
right?
In and out.
Right. It's
like, I'll become ultra good at something too. Like, I'll do the thing until I'm really good at it, and then that's all I wanted out of it, was to see if I could do that.
Yes.
And nothing ever sticks,
Yes. That's where COVID fucked me up. If I'm being completely honest, like I finished doing the band thing back in 2012, and then I just became a gym rat. and I started going to the gym all the time. I started working out all the time. Then, I got into a new relationship, which is my second wife. And, so I got a little bit complacent, and then I got really obsessive about going to the gym again. I got into great shape. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and the gyms closed down. And I was like, I felt lost, man. I felt absolutely lost. So I'm like, it kind of threw me into my own spiral where I'm like, dude, what am I going to do with myself? Why is my life like this? And I started second guessing and questioning absolutely everything. And honestly, this podcast is a result of that. This was kind of the answer to it. It was like,
yeah,
okay, I got to find something to focus
and you stuck with it.
Yeah. It's like I got to find something to focus my attention on. And it's turned out for the better. But, dude, I like I told you in text before we recorded, like, there's so many things that we have parallels to, brother.
I'll tell you what, man, that's like, dude, the dude, I will have this intense special interest about the most random thing, and it'll be all I can think about, and I don't want to think about anything else, and I'll wake up early in the morning and do it, and I'll do it till like one of the most famous things in my marriage with that was model airplanes. Like I got into model airplane building for a minute. And I mean, I love airplanes, right? I love aviation, but I got into making model airplanes, and I obsessively made model airplanes. It was during an off touring cycle. Like we weren't touring or writing or anything. And so I'd had nothing to do. And I just sat at home and made model airplanes all day, every day. And it wasn't until my wife, like, she actually came downstairs and she's like, you have been sitting at this table all day, every day for the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks. You haven't done anything. You bathe once a week. You don't like this is all you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, so what's wrong with it? And it wasn't until she had to pull me out of that thing. And dude, I bought airbrush compressor, airbrush, like all of everything that you need to like professional stuff to build model airplanes. And I'm like watching tutorials and I became really, really great at it. And then one day it was just like, I'm like, just like that. I got halfway into building another airplane and I've never picked it up since. All that stuff's sitting in my closet, and it's just, I moved on to something else,
Yeah, it's weird how it works like that, isn't it?
But the thing too, like when I'm working on music, which is my real passion, is if I'm in something, man, like this is something else that's crazy about, this is where the autism thing plays in, is I'm in it and I don't want to be pulled away from it. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm in here mixing a record or I'm working on a record and I'm in it and in it and in it every day, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. I'm out here till 10 at night, and I'm just focused in on it. If someone pulls me away from this, like if I have to go on tour, or if I have to go to the doctor's office or something, there's a physical discomfort to being pulled away from it. Like I'm just like I'm panicked almost from being pulled away from it, and just it's so strange, it's insane. But this is why this is why people like you and me, and we're made to do creative things.
Absolutely.
Like we're not made to, like I'm not I tried an office job one time early on, like 19, 20 years old. I worked for my dad for 6 months in a mortgage company. And dude, it was like, I am in no way made for that.
Dude,
like somehow I gave 2 or 3 people mortgages, like, and I don't, that's frightening. Like, cause I don't even know if I understand what I did,
right.
or what I, or what I had them sign, but they had mortgages. I'm just not built for that, man. I'm not built for, I'm built for doing creative things. I tell you what I did enjoy. I was a trim carpenter for 12 years when I was trying to make it in music, and I still love doing that. I still love working with wood. I still love, like, I would put stairwells in houses,
but see, that has a creativity element to it too.
Like I was fine with that job. That job was great. But never got obsessed over that one, thank God. But
Well, and the world's a better place because you didn't get obsessed with it, or else we wouldn't have Shinedown.
I did. I get done with work every day, and I would come home, and like I had a home studio at the time, like in our house, and I would write up there, man. I just work on music all night, you know. My poor wife, dude. She's just. I've been with her for. We've been together for 30 years, and she's been through the whole thing with me, man. And like, I mean, she's been a widow for 30 years. I mean, it's just like she's, you know, like she's like, I'm married to the game.
That's love,
man.
brother.
I'm married to the game.
Yeah, I tell you, being very left brained myself, I feel like I've almost had to develop a multiple personality disorder. To like, one side of me attends to my creative side, and the other side of me attends to my practical side.
Yeah.
The creative side tends to win 75% of the time, where my practical side, like, I have to be reminded to jump back into that practical mindset. But I can totally empathize with everything that you speak on, because I'm there too, and there's more people like us than not, realistically. I mean,
I think so, man. Well, it used to be, you know, attention deficit disorder, and it's like I don't think it's a disorder. You know, it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of like my schooling when I was a kid was just you know, I hate to use the word mortifying, but I spent most of my childhood in fear of like school. Like I feared it. Like I did, because I didn't understand anything that was happening. Like it was the most alien thing I've ever done was walking into a school and, okay, I'm supposed to do this, but I don't even understand what this thing is that I'm supposed to be doing. Everyone else seems to understand what it is. I'm the only person here that doesn't get it. And that would cause me to check out and shut down and not ever pay attention. I don't ever remember doing schoolwork. Like, I don't know how I got a high school diploma. I have no idea. I think they just gave it to me, you know, to get me out. But you know, but the thing is, I learned later is like, oh, like once I'm still am obsessed with learning. Like I want to learn as much stuff as I can learn. But I realized it was like, oh, like I'm like visually oriented. Like if you can visually show me something, like it changes everything. But that wasn't the way things were done. And so, you know, yeah, it's just crazy, man, how you know, there's a whole subculture of people who, you know, right now, dude, they're kids in school that don't are going through the same thing, but like the structure is just such that no, this is the way we do it, and you know, and that kid's in danger of getting left behind. But I think that's what the kids that get left behind, we realize at some point, it's like, you know, especially when we get out on our own, like we get out of school, we're done with it, now we can make our own decisions. There's this sort of chip on our shoulder, man, and it's like, oh yeah, well, fucking watch this, you know, and we get to work on the things that matter to us, and that's how you end up with CEOs and creators and inventors and, you know, tech magnates and, you know, all of this stuff. Like that's how that happens, you know.
I have never met somebody that created good art that didn't say they had ADD.
Yeah.
Anybody that's truly creative has probably been diagnosed or misdiagnosed or, you know, told at some point in their life that they have ADD. I have a daughter. She's almost 18. She is 10 times the musician that I ever was. She is so super talented. You know, schoolwork, regular conventional schoolwork is not her bread and butter, but she will be asked by every sports team in the area to come sing the national anthem on any day of the week.
Perfect.
You know?
Yeah, dude.
So it's like,
yeah, it's interesting, man, how that's the case. And you know, they say that this stuff is hereditary as well. And it wasn't until I got older that I started, and my mother would deny this. I'm pretty sure, but I watch the way my mom does certain things, and I'm like, I know where I got it from. You know, I do. I know exactly where I got it from. Especially now that I've come to understand it better. I didn't really understand any of it until about 4 years ago. I knew I had ADD. I had been told that when I was a kid. I guess they did testing on me because I had, you know, this is pat myself on the back or anything like that, but like I have a really high IQ score, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't function in school and I couldn't do anything. And my mom was like, well, it should be, this should work. And so they tested me and said, oh, he's got ADD. It's like, okay. So I had ADD and that was that. It was just like,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't do anything about it. It was just, this is what happened. And so I never knew like what ADD was. Honestly, I know that sounds ridiculous, but then I started doing some reading, and then I found out what the DSM is, and got tested and went through all this stuff, and come to find out I'm riddled with the stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
actually, interestingly enough, the way that my ADD presents itself is more like how it presents in females than in males. Males usually have the hyperactivity part of it, and I'm not hyperactive, man. I don't. I'm actually the opposite of hyperactive, but the females tend to have this circus happening in their brain internally. It's very insular. It's very inside. And that's exactly how mine is, man. It's a carnival up here 24/7. And so, but yeah, just finding that stuff out and then going, oh, like the autism thing threw me off, it's like, wow, man, like, but it makes total fucking sense. And,
Right.
The masking and like how did I get through these? Oh, I remember like hiding, like masking this thing to try to get through life, and like all this stuff, man. And so it was very interesting to find this stuff out later in life. And like, I guess that's getting me back to my point about my mom, which is like, now I look at my mom and I'm like, oh wow, and I mean, she's never been diagnosed with anything. I'm not diagnosing her. I'm just saying that there's stuff that she does that I'm like, oh, that now I see it. Now it makes sense.
There's correlation. Well, let's bring this back to music. I Had a Name comes out on February 28th. I'm sure it's going to be out on all streaming platforms. Are you releasing this physically?
Yeah,
as well?
There's vinyl and yes, CDs coming out. I always want to do CDs, man, because like I feel like people forget how good CDs sound.
They're making a comeback.
I hope so. Yeah. So there's a link to my merch store off of my Instagram. eBassProd is my Instagram, at eBassProd. And also Eric Bass Presents on YouTube. You can watch the videos. And but there's a merch store up there. We have merch. This can be for sale. We have you can pre-order all that stuff. And there's vinyl, there's hoodies, there's CDs,
awesome.
all kind of stuff, man. So please go check it out.
Also, Shinedown's doing a tour, the Dance Kid Dance Tour.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be hitting my market in Omaha, Nebraska on April 26th. I'm pretty excited for it. I'm going to try and make it out. I'm hoping you and I can connect in person.
Yeah, man.
But
yeah, we have new Shinedown music. There's in this computer, this contraption here. I'll even turn it around. Watch this. In this contraption right here. That computer right there, and in that mixing board right there, exists a new Shinedown record that's being worked on right now. So, so that's happening right now simultaneously, man. It's a busy time, but again, back to the depression thing and all that. I was just try to outrun it, man. Just try to stay out in front of it and stay as busy as I can stay, and if hopefully if I stay busy enough, it can't catch me. So.
Brother, I appreciate that. I appreciate your vulnerability and your ability to kind of share that side of your life. I think that's what helps other people grow, and that is a gift, like to be able to give people that feedback in a very personalized and reciprocal way. My closing question typically on the podcast is very well correlated to that. And it always is, what's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it is today?
Don't tell lies.
That's truth.
Don't lie. I heard a saying one time, if you never tell a lie, you never have to remember a story.
Right.
And even small lies, it's difficult, man, because like sometimes you want to embellish that story and you want to make things sound better than they are. And but just think about that, man. If everybody just took that to heart and went, you know what? No more lies. The world would be great. we'd be all right, about as all right as we can be. That's you know, and like that was the first thing that popped in my mind as I'm saying it. You know, like just again to harken back to the faith thing. You know, treat, love your neighbor as yourself. You know, and those two things. There you go. There's two things.
Man.
I gave you two.
I love that. Eric, I am glad to now call you a friend.
Absolutely.
We are connected somewhat connected in the real world now. And if you never ever need another guy to reach out to, I got your six, man.
Appreciate
Just
it,
reach
brother.
out.
Thank you.
Let
Likewise.
me know.
Yeah.
But Eric Bass, the world is a much better place with you in it. Thanks for doing the show, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.